Here's another great summer song. It's just smooth, and you can always feel the breeze carrying that jasmine.
Sills and Croft.
Very good.
Summer breeze.
Now, here's a man who should know about summer holidays because he's on the go most of the year with Coxie's Big Break. Geoff Cox, good evening.
G'day, boys. Well, it's only been 13 years. You'd think I'd have a fair idea of where you want to go, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I remember when you got that. I think you were did some work with 3AK with me, and you said,
I did.
I'm doing this new television show they're asking me to do.
And I remember vividly when you were on air, I came in and I said, Mansfield, you're in a suit. Why are you in a suit when you're working on the radio?
Exactly.
I remember that very well.
Yeah, and I remember meeting your boys at the show.
Yes, that's exactly. Well, they're 23, and let's see, Edward is 21.
Oh, good on you. Strike me, pick, they're about 5.
Yeah, they were 5 and 7, I think they were, mate.
Now, Geoff, let's talk not so much about the Big Break with Coxie, but your lovely holidays as a little kid with Mum and Dad.
Well, interestingly enough, Dad was an Army colonel, and so consequently, we didn't travel an awful lot because he was always involved with Army affairs and all those sorts of things. But I do remember vividly going to Sorrento 2 or 3 times with a couple of his cronies. They would always go at 5 o'clock to the Cunha Hotel and have a couple of beers in the beer garden, and would always feed the kids at that stage. And I remember I was older than all of the other kids. I was about 14 or 15, and all the other kids were about 12. And I remember, no, that's probably wrong. I was 12, they were probably 9, and we decided to have, I'll never forget this, decided to have a midnight feast, which was all very secretive, and the kids couldn't wake me up. I remember vividly laughing like hell the next morning because I got hell because I wouldn't wake up, so the kids didn't get their chocolate, so I was furious. But yeah, I mean, holidays, how they've changed. I heard Craig talking about the Vanguard. I know we had an Austin, and I remember vividly the number plate was BG040. It was a little black car, and Mum and Dad would be in the front, and I'd be in the back because I was an only child. And off we go. I remember we went to Sydney one weekend to see Dad's brother, and he taught me to swim in DY. And then my Dad's other brother was in Newcastle, and he was a colonel too. In fact, the 3 brothers were all Army colonels all at the one time in the Australian Army, which is a bit of a record, I believe. But when we got up to Newcastle, he ran the Salt Sea Baths, which are still there in Merriweather, and he took me down there and was very impressed that I could swim, and I was so proud to show off in front of my uncle.
Isn't that beautiful? Those baths were always wooden with stilts and poles and decking that created a square in the ocean. How it was never blown down, I'll never know.
You're probably very right, I think. But I mean, the holidays now. I mean, it's with the cars the way they are, and people now even with caravans and caravan parks. I mean, how they've improved in the last 20 years is ridiculous. And I mean, we've just spent a week last week down on the Shipwreck Coast, and everybody says Lorne is fantastic, which I agree. But we went actually down to Apollo Bay, which is a little quieter. And magnificent beaches, and so many different things to do. We did a lady who makes soap out of goat's milk. Now, this sounds strange, but she says she's a naturopath as well, and she can cure so many people. She works on people with psoriasis and all this sort of stuff. And we did a whole story on her, and it was fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
I mean, there's so much to see along that Great Ocean Road, isn't there? From Wye River and all the way to the 12 Apostles.
Oh, you've got it, Philip, because, I mean, down there, when you talk about the Shipwreck Coast, more ships were shipwrecked there in a period of time than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike Brady, who, of course, works at AW a lot, and we are very, very great mates. I remember doing a ball in Lorne one Saturday night for the Lorne Hospital, And afterwards we went back to a mate of his house looking over the whole of Lorne, and we hadn't eaten, and they did a barbecue about 1 in the morning. We were still sitting there at 7 a.m. with Brady holding the floor, talking about the shipwrecks and the ships of the shipwreck coast, and it was probably one of the most fascinating nights I've ever had in my life. I couldn't believe it.
Isn't that interesting?
Oh, he could absolutely write a book. He's just about an historian on the shipwreck coast, and he knows all the ships, how they used to float the timber out to the ships, and quite incredible. To actually get him on the show one night and talk to him would be fantastic.
Isn't that great? That's fascinating.
Yeah.
To sit there all night, it'd be quite beautiful down there.
Oh, yeah, but a big starry night looking over the bay. I might add that in about a $3 million house, so it wasn't too hard to take.
No, it would not be too hard.
And of course, that road's wonderful all the way to Robe in South Australia, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Like, you get down to Warrnambool, and there's things like the Maritime Museum in Warrnambool, where they've still got the Lockhart peacock that floated in a case off the ship, and the only bit of damage is a little chip out of its beak. And I got to tell you, by hell, I couldn't find it. And in the old school, it's about 4.5, 5 foot high. And it's just this most magnificent bird that was brought out by for one of the hierarchy here that, of course, it never got to when the Lockhart went down. But the history down there is fascinating. And also, places like the museum in Sorrento. Nobody ever goes to it. It's the little museum on the left-hand side.
And it's got a landmine in the front of it.
Correct. And if you go in there when it's open, when the people are there and they're so dedicated, the history of what happened it's basically about the rip and how that all worked.
Oh, that's marvellous. Coxie, we've got to go. Just thank you so much for a lovely little segment on your early travels with Mum and Dad.
Anytime, boys.
Good on you, Coxie.
Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas to you too, Geoff.